to City on a Hill Kids Church Online.
I'm Lola.
And I'm Jimmy.
Today we're going to be talking about Daniel going to Babylon.
But that'll be after time of worship.
Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us, save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Yeah, yeah. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us, save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Oh, Lord, I lift your name on
For the next few weeks, we are going to be speaking from the book of Daniel. This is one of the books in the Bible written by Daniel himself. But who was Daniel? Daniel was a Jewish boy of noble birth who was taken to Babylon by force by the then king of the Babylonians, King Nebuchadnezzar. He was about 17 years old when he was taken. What had happened was that King Nebuchadnezzar had besieged Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the capital of Judea at the time. So he had besieged Jerusalem. And when they had surrendered, he took people and treasure back to Babylon. Now, the word besiege means that an army will surround a place. It could be a city, it could be a town. And what would happen is that they wouldn't let anything to come in or out, or anybody to go in or out of the place that has been surrounded by them until they surrender. And that's what King Nebuchadnezzar did. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you the story, how it is written in the Bible. King Nebuchadnezzar. I think I'll be calling him King Nebi sometimes. So, King Nebuchadnezzar, had gone to Egypt to fight them, and he lost. And this made him very angry. And then, more so, the king of Judea, the king of Jerusalem at that time, decided to side with the Egyptians. Oh my goodness. And King Nebuchadnezzar did not like that at all. So he decided to besiege Jerusalem. Nobody and nothing got in or out. No goods, no food, nothing got in or out. And when this happens, people who are in that besieged city would starve. And if many people are starving at the same time, they tend to surrender. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Jerusalem surrendered. And what did King Nebuchadnezzar do? He took so much treasure from the temple in Jerusalem and other places in Jerusalem and took that treasure from the temple in Jerusalem to the temple of his God in Babylon. He also took lots of people by force back to Babylon so that they would work in Babylon. But he specifically asked Ashpenaz, who was in charge of all his staff, to get young men of noble birth, young men from the royal family, to come to Babylon, to his palace, so as to serve. These young men that Ashpenaz was to get were to be healthy, strong, good-looking, well-mannered, intelligent, and quick to learn anything. And there should be nothing physically wrong with them. Ashpenaz was to teach these people how to read and write the Babylonian language, everything about Babylonian literature, and just to teach them the Babylonian ways. These people were also to eat the food and drink the wine that came from the king's house, the same kind of food that the king was to eat, and the same wine that the king would drink. And this was to go on for 3 years, after which they would enter the royal service. Now, among these young men that were taken to Babylon were 4 Jewish boys: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. I wonder how long it took to travel from Jerusalem to Babylon. You know, somewhere else in the Bible, it talks about somebody by the name of Ezra who traveled the other way from Babylon to Jerusalem. And he went in a caravan. That means that he must have ridden a camel or donkeys and things like that. And it took him 4 months to make that journey. But these were captives. So it's unlikely that they would be going with camels and things like that. They would probably have to walk. But it took a long time to get there. But when they did get to Babylon eventually, their names were changed. They were given new names. Daniel was given the name Belteshazzar. Hananiah was given the name Shadrach. Mishael was given the name Meshach. And Azariah was given the name Abednego. Can you imagine that? Being given new names? But that's what happened. Now, Daniel decided in his heart that he didn't want to spoil his body. He didn't want to defile his body by eating what the king had asked for them to eat and drinking his wine. So he asked the permission of the person who was in charge of them not to eat all those things. And God had made that chief of staff like and respect Daniel. That is, he favored Daniel. So he explained to Daniel that he was scared that if the king sees that they are pale and thin and gaunt compared to the other people, that the king will make sure that he's not alive again. So Daniel calmly spoke to this attendant and said that he and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, would eat vegetables and drink just water for 10 days. After that, he can make a decision. And that's what happened. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and more nourished than all the others who were eating the king's food. So from then on, they started eating vegetables and drinking water. God made these 4 boys so intelligent. He gave them so much wisdom. They could understand anything. He also gave Daniel, in addition, the ability to be able to interpret dreams and visions. At the end of the 3 years, all the captives had to be interviewed by King Nebuchadnezzar. And it was found that Daniel and his 3 friends were more intelligent, more wise than every other person. And he was highly impressed. So Daniel and his 3 friends were now admitted into the royal court to work for the king. Whenever the king asked for advice, these 4 men's advice was 10 times better than any other person's advice. That was a bit of a long story, but a good one. Even though Daniel and his friends were taken from their homeland, from everything that they knew, sometimes things that aren't very nice happens. It does happen. That's just life. So back to this. Even though Daniel and his friends were taken by force from their homeland, when they got to Babylon, they decided to continue to obey and honor God. And because of this, God honored them too. They found favor in all those that were put in charge over them, and they remained healthy, and God made them very, very clever. Let us honor and obey God in every situation too. And that's the end of the story.
Hey guys, I am so excited that we have started the book of Daniel. This is going to be brilliant. And today I love the way that Daniel and his friends honoured God. And as I was doing some research about honour, I discovered that patchwork quilts are apparently a symbol of honour. I didn't know that before, and I'm not exactly sure why, but apparently people will sometimes make a patchwork quilt to honour somebody else. And so I thought, well, let's try that. That's a nice craft. You can see we're just making them out of paper. And what I've done is I've made these different patchwork designs, and on them I've written various different words to help us think about honour. Love, listen, give, serve, all of these different ways that we can honour God. So these are a little bit time consuming to make, but they're very easy. So all you need is a few different colours of paper, and what we're going to do is make shapes. So the best thing is to start with a square, and so start by folding over your triangle. If you're using A4, it will look like this, cutting off that extra edge, and then put that to one side. You might find you want that piece later, but you've got your square shape. And then really you can make all sorts of different squares and triangles. And if you start with this big square, they will all interlock nicely. So, for example, if you fold it into 4, if you cut those out, you would get big squares like these big green ones. If you then folded that in half again to make a triangle this size, that would be, well, I don't know if you can see them here. I've got these big triangles here that I have used. I've also used them here in this design. I've got the purple and the blue ones. And then if you fold that in half again, you get the small triangles, okay, which I've used lots of. I've used loads of these small triangles. Or if we unfold all of that and go back to our square, if we fold this into 4, then we've got the little squares that I've used in the corners of this design. So sometimes you can just cut out lots of different shapes, as I've got here, and just try things out. That is quite fun to do. Okay, so you can just cut out different shapes and try it out. But another idea is to have a look. You could look online, or you might have a book of patchwork designs. This one, for example, although it's made of very simple shapes, it comes out with this nice interlocking pattern, and I don't think I could have worked out how to do that if I hadn't had a pattern already. So what I did was I looked at a pattern online, and then I cut out the triangles and squares, well actually only triangles for that one that I knew I needed. So, cut out some different triangles and squares, and then all you need to do is get a larger piece of paper and arrange your design how you want it. Okay, so you'll have your different pieces, you'll get them put on in whatever way you think looks good. Okay, I'm not really making an entire one here, I'm just filling in with what I have, making some patterns, and then once you've got that arranged, what you want to do is obviously just glue them and put them on. And you can do that in 2 ways. You can either glue the whole paper and stick them all on, or you can glue them one at a time and get them stuck on. What I found was I didn't actually have a piece of paper that was big enough for an entire one. So you can see when I stuck it on, I do actually have a gap down the edge, but that's okay. It's holding together well enough. So get them stuck down onto a piece of paper. And then the last thing to do is just to choose some words that you want to write on. And so there's all different ways that we can honour God. So here I've put honour God in everything. I've put that in the middle, and then around the edge I've written some words to honour God. This one, I've repeated some of the words because I wanted lots of words to fit in all 16 of these squares. Now, patchwork looks really good if you use lots of different colours, and in fact it also looks really good if you've got patterns. So if you've got any patterned paper, I would recommend trying that out. And the nice thing is, once you've cut out some paper, you don't find you need every shape for one design, so you can end up making lots and lots. And these would also be a nice way to make a card for somebody. Maybe if you would like to honour your mum or your dad, or maybe you'd like to honour your grandpa or grandma or your teacher, you could make a patchwork card to honour them as well. And I'm sure they would really love that. So let's be people who honour God just like Daniel and his friends. Okay, well I hope you enjoy making these patchworks, and I'll see you again next week. Bye!
Even if not very good things happen to you, it's still best to honour God.
Imagine being forcefully taken away from your home, having your name given from birth changed, and learning some new strange things.
I know, but Daniel was confident in his God though.
How was that?
Well, he didn't want to eat or drink anything that God didn't like.
Oh yes, and they ate vegetables and drank water for 3 years.
He and his 3 friends honoured God by obeying him.
That's right, and God honoured them too. That's it for this week.
Till next time, bye!